Hey everyone, let's hope that Jimmy Kimmel doesn't have a leak in his house anytime soon.
Don't worry, Trump's got a whole new generation of thinkers lined up, including his newly confirmed Secretary of Homeland Security, Mark Wayne, Chuck Mike, Bruce Dave Mullen. Maybe Mellon's better. He is the now former senator of Oklahoma. Before he was elected to the Senate, Mark Wayne Mullen was a low-level MMA fighter and a plumber. That's right. We have a plumber protecting us from terrorism now. It worked for Super Mario. Why not, Mark Wayne?
I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and that was the late night host mocking Mark Wayne Mullen, of course, newly confirmed DHS secretary, for making a career as a plumber. So I want to argue this is more than just a dumb jibe on a late night show. One, it's deeply wrong about Mark Wayne Mullen. Two, it's deeply wrong about plumbers in general. Three, it goes to one of the worst cultural attributes of contemporary America. I want to go through each of those 3 points. Let's start with Mark Wayne Mullen himself. First of all, Mullen is not just a plumber. Now, I really don't think there is any such thing as just a plumber. I'm going to get to that point in a minute. But his father owned a plumbing business. Father becomes ill. Mullen is in college, quits his studies, takes over the business. What happens next? As a government report put it a while ago, Mullen is affiliated with 5 companies that provide plumbing services. Mullen Plumbing, Inc. provides residential and commercial plumbing services. Mullen Plumbing West Division, Inc. provides residential and commercial plumbing services similar to Mullen Plumbing, Inc., but operates in the Oklahoma City region of the state. Mullen Plumbing New Construction, Inc. provides construction services for residential and commercial plumbing purposes. Mullen Services, Inc. provides residential and commercial heating and air conditioning repair services. Mullen Environmental, Inc. provides water and waste treatment services. Representative Mueller owns, this is back when he was a congressman, owns 4 of the 5 companies listed above. That's an awful lot of plumbing. So you go through that and you think, you know what? He's not just a plumber. Again, I'm going to use that term, even though I think it's wrong, just for my purposes here at the moment. He's a businessman. He's a successful businessman. More on that. A couple weeks ago, Inc. magazine did a big piece on Mark Wayne Mullen, and it talked about his businesses. It starts off with an anecdote from a wedding venue that the Mullens own, and then goes on to say, spread across more than 1,600 acres, the ranch and wedding venue is one source of income. Mullen also owns twin real estate businesses, Mullen Properties and Mullen Properties West. According to his campaign website, Mullen has owned more than a dozen businesses over the years, including an HVAC company, a septic services firm, a construction company, and a restaurant, as his financial disclosure forms indicate. Mullen is perhaps most closely associated, though, with Mullen Plumbing, the once struggling family business that he took over from his ailing father and transformed into a multi-million-dollar home services firm employing hundreds of people. Mullen sold that business to a private equity firm in 2021 for an undisclosed sum. Financial forms suggest it may have gone for tens of millions of dollars, but he still owns a minority stake. Pretty impressive, huh? Classic American entrepreneurial story. We're supposed to look down on that because a lot of that involves the trades. Would have been better if you started a law firm or was a lawyer like everyone else in Washington, D.C. In fact, he doesn't have a 4-year college degree. I want to come back to that as well, which is totally irrelevant because he has shown that he has get up and go and the ability to manage multiple companies at once and grow a business. This is something that should be celebrated, not mocked, and that goes as well for just plumbing itself. Plumbing is a skilled and very admirable profession. This is not something fools and morons can do. It takes a lot of thought. You need to be able to problem solve, and then you need to be actually able to solve the problem yourself with your own hands and with tools there. You need to communicate with the customer, and attention to details is an absolute must. We all have stories like this, but I remember I was moving my late mother out of the home she lived in for about 50 years to an assisted living facility, and there was a problem in the basement, a terrible leak, right? We needed to get this thing fixed to move her out and eventually sell this home. So I called a plumber, the way we all do. Plumbing is so essential to our homes, to our businesses, to modern civilization. I remember this kid in his 20s. He was down there in the basement and he was looking up in the ceiling, kind of an awkward pause, silent for a while. He's just staring at the ceiling. And finally, I broke the silence and asked, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he said, "Thinking," right? He was looking up at the ceiling, signs where the pipes were, trying to figure out what the problem was, what pipe he should cut into, where he should join some pipes or whatever it was. But this was a problem that he had to sit there and think about. So it's a terrible thing. And you get to this more in the last part of this video. Just a terrible thing that we undervalue or look down upon that kind of thinking and exalt the kind of thinking of someone who can write a 3,000 word essay on an Elizabethan poem, right? I'm a little bit more inclined towards the latter, right? If you wanted me to figure out your plumbing, you'd be in a big trouble. But both kinds of thinking are important. Both are admirable. And one, in fact, is actually more practical and applicable to people's daily lives, and that's the plumber. And you can't just pick up one day and become a plumber. It requires years of education and training, on the job training through apprenticeships. And again, this should be considered as valuable as a 4-year degree. It is real training, but while you're doing it, you're not accumulating debt in most cases, and you're actually helping create something and fix problems as you go along the way. And by the way, plumbers are paid quite well. As my colleague Charlie Cook pointed out in an article a couple years ago, the median income of an American plumber is $52,404, which is higher than the median income of Americans with bachelor's degrees in art history, humanities, anthropology, sociology, ethnic and civilizational studies, art and graphic design, botany, and modern languages. So the guy, to generalize and simplify, who's decided to become a plumber may well have made a better choice than the person who's studying art history or one of these other liberal arts subjects. Not that I have anything against art history or the liberal arts, but why are we looking down on the guy who's made the choice that overall is probably going to lead to a higher salary for him after a couple of years, right? Isn't that a good thing? Another point is that only about 40% of working Americans have a 4-year degree, a bachelor's degree. So looking down on most of the country's workers is a really bad look. And then this kind of attitude that only values college education and people with college degrees, at the margins at least, pushes people into getting college degrees that might not be necessary for them, that might saddle them with debt, that might not lead to gainful employment, certainly not in the subjects they studied. So we shouldn't be doing that either. And then finally, just to underline this point, this kind of condescending attitude towards the trades overlooks the talents of a huge swath of Americans. Smarts and talent and aptitude come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, but there's a tendency to value just people who manipulate language and engage in reasoning around language and try to convince people of things and analyze legal contracts, manipulating words, basically. But there are all sorts of other people who are smart and talented in other ways. And by the way, one of them was Mark Wayne Mullen, right? He may have started out as just a plumber, but what happens? He grows his businesses, he diversifies his businesses, he gets quite wealthy, he becomes a member of Congress, a U.S. senator, and a member of the president's cabinet. How many people do that? And he started as a plumber. So please don't condescend to him. And more importantly, don't condescend to all the hardworking Americans out there who work with their hands, who are talented, who are skilled, who are making quite a good living. It is deeply wrong and un-American, or at least it should be. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.